Welcome to FPB's Meet the Candidates. I'm your host, Kathy Lindsay. This Cable 10 series allows you, the viewer, to hear directly from the candidates who are running for local office and that will be representing you. We've taken questions from social media and on email so that we can discuss the issues that are important to you and to hear directly from the candidates about how they feel about them. This is all leading up to the May 19th primary, where we will be electing those to represent each party. So here we are. Today, our special guest is Marshall Flynn, and he's running for Magistrate of the 6th District. So let's welcome Marshall. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let's talk a little bit. First of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then what motivated you to run.
Sure. Okay. My name's Marshall Flynn. I'm a lifelong resident here in Franklin County. I've got generations that go back all the way before the founding of the city and the county on both sides. So a few years ago, I've ran for this office before. I kind of came up short a couple of times. I want to do it again.
You're persistent.
I'm persistent, yes.
Okay.
But about 7 or 8 years ago, I survived the Widowmaker. So, having that happen kind of makes you realize kind of how short life is.
Sure, yeah.
Being a lifelong resident here, I really feel committed to the community, and I want to have a chance to serve.
Yeah, all right. So for people who aren't familiar, what area does the 6th District cover?
6th District is the most widespread area of the whole county. You got to start all the way up at Ball Knob, and go all the way down along the Shelby County line, all the way down to the interstate. You kind of go out a little bit towards right before the game farm area, and then it kind of cuts up and moves around out Choteville area, and crosses over.
So we're talking about
Bell Point, and then actually, hang on, it goes a little further.
Okay.
We go all the way into Bell Point and River Bend, and then we go all the way down to downtown, and then we shoot up East Main Street.
Wow.
All the way up to KSU and parts of East Main Street area.
So it's a big area.
It's the biggest area,
and it represents a lot of different areas.
Demographics.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I'd say there's it's mostly rural. Would you say a lot of rural?
Oh, definitely mostly rural.
Okay. All right. So let's just get back to your role in the fiscal court in local government. So what do you believe is the proper role for the court in residents' daily lives? Is there a point where they should step in and where they should stay out?
That's a good question.
Right. That's what I'm here for.
Providing necessary services is always the most important. Fire, roads, trash pickup. Making sure that everybody's got what's necessary. But trying to tell everybody, do you need to have inspections done on your property and all this, and getting more into everybody's daily business? I think we kind of got to stay out of that to that degree.
So in the primary, voters are choosing between candidates that may have similar values.
Right.
So why are you the strongest advocate for the 6th District?
Okay, I feel like I'm probably the most effective because I've worked for almost 30 years as a real estate appraiser and a realtor, and I work in a lot of surrounding communities. I work with a lot of banks. I work with a lot of developers. So also having my roots pretty deep here in the community, I feel like I know the area pretty well. I feel like I've get counseled on some of the issues that come up from other parties that are here in the community a lot. And I feel like I got a better understanding on it, and I feel like I can ask the right questions to make sure we're not just jumping the gun and making sure that the decisions that are made are in the best interest of the community and not so much just self-interest.
So do you feel like that experience gives you the edge over your opponents?
I feel like it does.
Okay. So do you think there is something that you still need to learn?
Always. You got to learn every day.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to get into office, there's always a learning curve there. I mean, you don't really understand how each meeting goes into, trying to decide on the work sessions and so forth, and what goes on behind closed doors, because that's always what everybody's wondering about is, what's really going on behind closed doors. You can't really say a whole lot about it to some degree, but I think having a seat at the table and trying to have the right questions and being able to get an understanding of why is this a closed session meeting. I feel like I can bring something more to make sure that those decisions are being made properly.
Okay. So again, we're talking about a primary,
Right.
and so you're running against members of the same
Yes.
party,
Uh-huh.
and you're running as a
there's
Democrat.
4 of us, yes.
Okay. So again, they often agree on broad principles, but where do you take a different approach where it comes to local government?
It depends. I don't really know where their positions are on what the issue is. So
Okay.
I guess we got to really get. I don't want to sit there and say, hey,
Yeah.
you know, he's this and she's this, and
Well,
we don't
just
want
say
to do
just
that.
in general,
Uh-huh.
what is your philosophy your approach when it comes to how local government should operate?
We need to be a little more transparent. I feel like the last several years, there's been some things that have come about that just seems like this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Let's ask the public later.
Yeah.
And then they
Well,
get a little bit of backlash.
That's one of my
And,
questions today is,
uh-huh.
do you feel like this court has been transparent enough?
I think they could be more transparent.
and
usually, like, let's just say, for example, all right, the industrial park, that's always the big topic for right now,
Yeah.
or one of them.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going to do something like this, let's say, hey, it's okay announcing it. Let's get some public feedback to make sure, because there's a lot of good ideas out there that come out from the public
Okay.
on major major projects like that.
Okay.
And then coming up, we're going to have the convention center. Hopefully, that's something I feel really strongly about. I'd like to see that get completed. It's been, downtown area. You can see for the last 15 years or so since it's been demolished that it's hurting, the downtown.
Yeah.
And the rest of the community. We need draws that they're going to bring in.
we have a big
people.
green space.
Well, the green space, that's another issue I've kind of commented on. That's what's down there now. But as far as green space goes, out in the rural areas, let's say,
Right.
All of our surrounding communities, they all have what they call 5-acre minimums.
Okay.
Here we've got a 1.5 acre, unless you're in another zoning district where there is a 5 acre. But I think we need to.
Can you explain what that
Sure.
means?
Yeah.
for somebody
Briefly,
who may not
that basically means you want to go build a house.
know? Yeah.
You need to have 1.5 acres of land right now in the majority of the county. You go to Shelbyville, Scott County, they all have 5-acre minimums, which means, hey, I want to build a house out in the county. I need 5 acres.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of caveats to doing that I normally see is those areas are growing a lot faster than we are. We're not keeping up with our surrounding communities with the growth that the other communities are experiencing in addition to housing. So there are some areas that I think we need to try to keep up with them, and one of that areas is probably going to a 5-acre minimum, and there is some pushback on some of the logic on it, but if you think about it, and it encourages more infill development. Okay. So if you run out of area out, in the county area to do expansions and stuff, then you're encouraged more to come in to the city areas and develop from that point.
Right.
So if you look at Fayette County and Woodford County, they both have 30 to 40 acre minimums, and it seems like they're able to get the growth and everything inside, and preserving the green space.
Right.
So that's kind of what I like about it, and seeing how the surrounding communities, especially Shelbyville and Scott County, they seem to be thriving and growing. They have the same linkages that we have as far as the interstates and exits and so forth. So, and then that also kind of leads to another area where if we get the sewers finished up here on the south side of the county going towards Lawrenceburg, it's going to open up another Pandora's box to where we're going to have sewers out in some of these areas, and it may encourage more development in those areas. And we might want to say, hey, those that want to protect it, not have all the increased traffic on the roads and so forth,
Right.
we might want to go to that to kind of slow it down a little bit, and then, like I said, encourage the infill development in some of these other areas.
Okay.
So,
well, we'll revisit some
Sure.
of those topics as we move down.
Sorry, I got long-winded, but
No, that's okay. I love it.
Okay.
That makes my job easier.
Okay.
So, again, when we're talking about just the specific needs of Franklin County residents,
Okay.
Again, in a primary, you're running as a Democrat. How do you balance the party values?
Well, that's
against
another
the
good
needs?
question.
Yeah.
from what we've seen here historically, it's been dominantly run by Democratic, parties at all magistrate seats for the last 40 years or so.
Yeah.
There is some conservative values that come into play, and I'd say what I kind of feel is we might need to maybe push towards going through a tax base that's more service related.
Okay.
There are a lot of people in some of the rural areas that only want trash pickup and they want the roads cleaned. They don't like the idea of paying the property taxes and so forth that they're doing,
Right.
and paying for like some county areas that have sewers and better police force and so forth.
Sure.
And so you look at Fayette County as an example. They have what they call service-based districts, which means you get storm sewers or regular sewers or trash pickup and so forth. You got different districts that have kind of been created to kind of reflect some of the demands. And the trash pickup that the city's kind of going through right now is, I don't know if it could be in the best interest for the county to maybe, they got a meeting tonight, so I don't want to say anything because I don't know what's really going on with it yet. But I think in the grand scheme of things, our community's always been privileged to have trash pickup as part of what we pay as county taxes, and that's something I don't think that anybody really wants to let go of.
Right.
That kind of separates us. That's why kind of our tax rates have always been a little higher than some of the surrounding areas, is primarily because of that.
Okay.
So I think that we need to kind of work with the city or
But they're lower
some
than
way
city taxes.
because I mean, they're like, how much are you going to lower it
Right.
if they try to go to a third party outsource?
Right.
It's been some questions that I've had feedback with.
Sure.
And it's like, what's fair? Because you can go to some areas, like, I'm just going to make this an example, say Silver Lake. You've got majority of it's in the city where they have city receptacles, and then you got one little street that's in the county,
Really?
and they have the county pickups. And it's so, they're the ones that say we don't have to pay the city taxes and we get the bigger receptacles. And that's
Wow.
one of the one of the things that I get from a lot of the city residents is they're like, why can't we have bigger receptacles? Why do we have to, and it's kind of like, well, it's a good point. And,
Limiting.
and when you think about it, the trucks and so forth, if they're picking up smaller receptacles, of course, they're going to get worn out a little faster.
Yeah.
So, then it kind of leads into another topic, too.
Right.
What about the BFI agreement that's out there in Benson Valley? I don't know when that's going to expire, but I think that's going to come up sometime soon in this next term. So looking forward,
Right.
I don't want to, say anything, about what's gone on, because we all tend to make decisions based on what the information is we have at the time.
Right.
So
And it
there's
may not
nothing
be
that I want to
accurate.
do in the past, and then if you get more information, right, you might be able to change your mind or see how things work out. So anyway.
Okay. Well, we'll move on.
Okay.
So the 6th district, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing residents in this district? And part 2, how will you ensure that those concerns aren't overshadowed by more populated parts of the county?
That's a good question.
What can I say?
You're good with it. I think primarily with the Ball Knob rural area, it's more like, for the last several years, they're like, why don't we have the high-speed internet and so forth? Now it's finally starting to get out that way. It always feels like this area always seems to be, not catered to enough. I mean, they've had some more bridge work and so forth that's been going on, but sometimes they always feel like if there's a pecking order of areas in the county, they always kind of sometimes feel like we're maybe the last area that gets considered, just to be honest from what I normally see.
Sure.
But the downtown area, they seem to be, getting a lot of attention and so forth. So it's really kind of hard because of the magisterial seat. It's often confusing to a lot of people in the public. They're like, well, what do you really do? And I'm like, well, I guess you can say you're kind of like a county commissioner,
Yeah.
To some degree. But where do you draw the line then? Does you just take care of the county, or why is it part of the city involved? And so sometimes it's hard to make that, understand to the general public sometimes. And
Okay.
so going into that as well, the fiscal court adopted the strategic plan of growth that's been adopted. So it's great that we're trying to go that way, but at the same time, there's one area that's going to come up this next few years that's on that plan, which is the merger issue.
Right.
Like, are we ready to go to that direction or not?
Are we?
Some people.
What do you think?
I think we probably. I think in the grand scheme of things, we probably are. Back in 1988 or so, when it first came up, it got pretty close to passing back then. Then it came up again, 20 years later. It did not come as close as it did the time before, but the problem is the cost on doing it.
Yeah.
Frankfurt's kind of, I think, with our sewer extensions and so forth, encroaching out into the county areas. Usually, in most cities, if you have the sewer, it would stay within a city boundary. Now, in this case, we've kind of spread all the way out. So the infrastructure is kind of already, we're almost kind of like one and the same in a lot of the areas to some degree. So that's going to be something that will be talked about, and that's going to need something. We need the feedback from the public, and it's kind of weird on how the merger works now, because after 20 years ago, they now decided that the grassroots efforts isn't really effective anymore, because if you get it passed like on a ballot, it goes back right to fiscal court to say, all right, should we do this or not? And just let fiscal court just go ahead and say, let's go ahead and look at it and explore it now. And that's probably, I'd like to be involved with that.
Right.
So,
okay. Well, obviously, you followed what the fiscal court has been doing over the past several years or a long time.
Yeah.
So what is one decision the current fiscal court has made that you would have done differently?
I'd say there's a few. I'd say the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
They've had some changes to it. I think there's a disconnect between land use and zoning. They've turned in one plan that should have been accepted, and it seems like some things kind of got revised and with little public notice or so forth, and it kind of changes things that were done from prior comprehensive plan committees that we're trying to.
Sure.
I served on one of those, about 20 years ago, and it's kind of like, well, this is kind of the direction the community needs to take, and now all of a sudden it looks like, well, we're changing everything now, and it's kind of like, well, what's really the reason why? It's just because we might prefer something to look a different way or not. Like, best example is everything on the other side of the interstate along 127. They want to change everything to industrial use. However, you've got existing structures that are all commercial, and that's what's being, developed right now.
Yeah.
So you can't just change it overnight. And 40, 50 years from now, it's, the traffic flow and everything is still there. It's still going to stay commercial. So, there's a couple areas I think that need to be revised on that, but we're going to have to wait another 10 years or so to address that. So we'll see how things go. So, but like I said, it's one of those things where you can't really get too critical about things, because if you're not in the room and you don't know what information's provided at the time, you can't really criticize too many people's decisions on that.
Right.
So,
well, my next question, it may seem harsh, but it's not meant to be. So, like, when you're on a commission or a board or there's a group of people who are deliberating to vote on something, would you consider yourself a leader or a follower?
Depends on the issue.
Okay. Yeah. So, say everyone is going one way, but you don't believe that way, you're comfortable to speak up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And usually if I do speak up, I usually want to make sure I got some extra data there to say, hey, take a look at this, pass it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's like, well, let's pause the thinking process and maybe push it off for another week or two to the next meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, the more information everybody has, the better decisions that are made.
Sure. Okay. Sure. So we've been talking about a lot of issues in Franklin County. So what do you see as the top 3 issues that Franklin County is facing right now?
The top 3 issues are going to be growth.
Yeah.
That's one. We're, like I said, I think we're kind of lagging behind our surrounding areas, and then, we've been growing for the last 4 years at just 1 to 1.5%. kind of concerned because you go to areas like Anderson County and Shelbyville and Scott County, and they're growing 6-7%.
Right.
You know, even Owen County's going, in Henry County, if you want to go to those rural areas, they're going, 3% or so. So that's one area's growth. Two, I kind of think that we need to be more limited in being involved with private development.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is it's like, I'm not trying to harp on Target or anything, but I think I'm going to go to Target. I'm glad it's coming here, but it's like
I hope it attracts a lot of people here.
Hopefully it will, but I'm kind of concerned about how the resources that were used from both the city and the county they've been involved with trying to help the development,
incentives
and so forth, because the other developers at the time that have developed, they didn't have those incentives, and it's kind of like I'm a little concerned that sometimes if we're like trying to beg places to come into the town, and we're offering a lot of these extra incentives,
who's losing out?
Well, it's like what kind of is it a smack in the face to the other people, the other industries that we have here and the other commercial developers and so forth. So I think we got to kind of maybe get a little more restrictive on some of the resources that are being allocated for some of that. And then I guess number 3, it's going to have to be the garbage issue, I think, because I think that affects everybody, because if we don't maintain public pickup, it's going to have a negative effect, I think, if we try to transition to privatization in the city areas, because you might see increases in rents in some of the apartments and so forth. And I don't know if everybody's going to be able to put that in their monthly budgets to say, hey, we got another $70-$80 bill coming in. Are we going to be able to do it? If we don't do it, are they going to not pick it up? Are we going to be attracting rats and so forth to some areas, and then you got other neighbors calling and complaining. So I think the way we have it right now, it's really, really a strong part of our community that we need to find some way to keep it maintained.
Okay. So specifically to your district, the 6th district, is there one specific policy or project that you would champion if elected?
The convention center.
Okay.
I think, if we've been talking about that, I want to be involved with the design on that to make sure it's can accommodate graduations. That's been the biggest thing I hear and after going through it several times. We need a place to facilitate something for all the high schools here, at least at a minimum. And trying to bring in other concerts and other events and so forth. We need something. It doesn't need to be 10,000 seat arenas or anything like that, but we need something where if somebody wants to come in here and we want to draw in people from the other areas, they're going to be wanting to come in here and stay overnight or
I think the issue is how to pay for it. Do you
how to pay for it. That's something else right now for getting into all these extra ventures right now with the industrial park and some of the other private development. How are we going to be able to maintain some of the community needs with the drug care, health care, some of the things that a lot of our community does depend on. Are we at a point where we've got the athletic complex getting ready to start too, and then we're trying to look at maybe doing the joint venture with the aquatic center and so forth. Like, where is that really the priorities? I mean, I'd like to see them these be involved with our community, but at the same time, is the timing, are we spinning our way to a point where we're not going to be able to be ready to prepare for another disaster or so forth? And that also brings up the flooding. That was affected the whole areas along here. That's been something else that's kind of affected the Bell Point area, especially at the District 6 and some of the downtown areas, of course. So I mean,
so what would you say your priorities for investments are?
Priorities for investments, I think, I'm kind of a historical guy. So there's a guy, Humphrey Marshall, that had was one of the first state senators that lived here, and he had the house there on Wilkinson Boulevard. he said when Frankfurt was first forming, the three things that if Frankfurt concentrated on, it would grow, and that is arts, literature, and sciences. Now, that doesn't mean a whole lot today, so I think we need what are the arts, what are the literature, and what are the sciences. I think we need to draw in, a lot of industrial to take care of the sciences. We've got plenty of museums, and we need to keep that going. As far as the arts, I think we need to draw with an event center or something to, bring somebody, other acts and stuff here into town. And he kind of alluded back, this was 200 years ago, that if we concentrated on those three things, Frankfurt would, really grow,
Sure.
especially having state government here.
All of this, it's kind of focused on budgeting. What experience do you have with large budgets?
With large budgets? I'd say I've reviewed a lot of budgets with a lot of the developments that I do. But as far as small budgets, I'm pretty good with that because I've got a household budget. But I think we need to, I've got enough resources with other accountants, and there's a lot of people here in the community that if, something looks, we don't have the clear answer to, we can at least reach out and, get some feedback on that. And there's a lot of people in the public that, have got a wealth of knowledge.
Okay. Do you see any infrastructure gaps within the 6th district that
The
would
infrastructure
need to be addressed?
gaps, it's going to be in the Ball Knob area. It's all has to do with the high-speed internet. That's the next big thing that, when the next census comes around, that's going to be one of the big factors that they're going to have when they're allocating federal funding is to see what areas have the high-speed internet. That's substituting in who had water and sewer services. So, we used to have the old railroads and so forth. And so now
Right.
this is the next, the high-speed internet. It's really the next big thing that we need to make sure our whole area has access to or in order to keep up with the growth patterns of the surrounding communities.
Okay.
So,
Well, what are your thoughts on the fiscal court's role on housing affordability and availability in Franklin County?
need to be limited because I think private development, we should help the developers, but I think we don't need to be involved in putting in too much, for that. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need to kind of make sure that our community's providing affordable rental housing and so forth, for Section 8 and so forth like that. But I don't think we need to go out here and say, let's make the subdivision and everybody come, because every time I think that the city or county has gotten involved with trying to do a development, it's taking years for every lot to be sold. It's kind of like Midway out there, their industrial development. They started that 20 years ago, and they said we only want to have factories and everything that's going to provide a lot of jobs, which was a good plan. But they've kind of realized that smaller businesses and so forth are bringing all the jobs, and now they've kind of been able to finish up filling out what they had as development out there. So they realize they're not making any money,
Right.
So the growth is kind of strange. It's not, there's no magic bullet, so to speak. So we need to be aware of it, but I don't think we need to go all in and say, hey, this is the way we need to go. We need to kind of let the market kind of dictate, how the growth should go.
Yeah.
So,
well, Marshall, we've come to the end of our time. Can you believe it? Went fast.
I cannot believe it. Okay.
So this is the time when you have the chance to address our viewers directly. You can look into that camera there.
Well,
tell them why you're the best candidate for the job.
Like I said, my name's Marshall Flynn. I'm a lifelong resident here in Franklin County. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I think I'm the most effective candidate for this office for this election cycle. And if you want, free to contact me. My phone number is 502-330-1599, or you can go to my website at flynnmagistrate.com.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming today.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
I know our viewers appreciate hearing directly from you. Again, this is Marshall Flynn. He's a candidate for Magistrate of the 6th District. And to our viewers, remember to get out and vote on the May 19th primary. Yes. That's it. And then tune into Channel 10 for live election returns Just remember, you all, it's election season, so get informed and go voice your choice. And that's it for now. We'll see you next time on Meet the Candidates.